out there. I guess I don't need to be too nervous now, do I?
Yep.
No. I want you to see this picture right here. Young Living's first convention at the St. Mary's Farm in 1995.
Oh, grabe!
We may have had 150 people, maybe 200, and Gary was so excited. Oh my goodness, he thought this was the greatest thing that ever happened at that moment. But I want you to see what we've become. This was taken this morning. Look at that picture. How many thousands and thousands of people were at the farm. Look at all of you. This is 2 years ago. Last year. And look at you tonight. Oh my goodness gracious. 25 years.
Wow!
We've been waiting for this moment. And I want you to know, if I didn't believe Gary was watching over us and is a part of this celebration, I wouldn't be able to get through this evening. But I know that many of you feel him close by. So the stories are amazing. But this 25-year essential oil blend was in his mind a long time ago. And you know what? It has all these beautiful oils in it. And I must tell you, the first time that I bought all my oils and I took them home and they were on the sink in my bathroom, I looked down at all these little bottles as they looked up at me, and I thought, I wonder what it would be like if I put sandalwood on my face. Sandalwood is the first oil that I put on my face. And you know, I put all of them on my face. But I use all of them for many different things. And helichrysum is one of my most favorite oils. And it's one that I always carry in my purse, especially when I go to soccer games. Because Joseph is always running and saying, Mom, quick, I need some helichrysum. We do lots of interesting things with all these oils. But these are the oils that give life and excitement. And to put them all together in just the right combination, I am going to be so excited to hear the stories that come. And who knows what you're all going to be saying. Normally, this blend would cost you $120. But for a convention, you're getting it for 25 cents less than $60. I don't know why they have to go $59.75. But the PV is the same. And for the first 20,000 who buy the blend, you will be receiving this commemorative package with the pin for the exact same price, not $1 more than the price of the blend itself. So hustle up while supplies last. Many people ask, how did Young Living start? What was it like in the beginning? I know that we have so many people out there, and why don't you just yell if you're here for the first time? Oh my goodness. My goal tonight is to give you something of real substance that you can take home with you, understanding the miracle of Young Living. Because we are a miracle. We are different from everyone else. We do things differently, and we have different goals than the rest of the world and people who are in our kind of business. I'm sure most of you know the story of Gary. He grew up in poverty in Challis, Idaho. And they don't look too affluent in this picture now, do they? He's standing in front of his maternal grandfather. He was about 8 years old. This is the homestead. If you go to the cabin, If you visit the cabin next to our brand new corporate office, you will see an exact replica of the cabin in which Gary lived for the first 4 years of his life. Gary drew the plans, gave them to Kevin Schultz, the architect, and it is built exactly as Gary wanted it. So you need to go and see that. This is the second cabin that their father built. In Gary's own words, as a young boy, I dreamed of going to Canada and homesteading a ranch on the Canadian frontier. This is the beginning. In 1967, when I was 18, I loaded my personal belongings into my Mustang and began the long drive to Quesnel, British Columbia. A year later, in 1968, he was given 320 acres in the last Homestead Act in the Caribou District, 30 miles in the wilderness, in the bush, as he always called it. And that's where he was going to build his dream, his horse business and his logging business. He was going to carve it out of the wilderness. How many of you would do that? Who does that today? Who has that kind of a dream? Most of us never even hear of such a thing. He was so excited, and he was the youngest ever to receive 2 contracts with 2 of the largest mills in British Columbia. But he had a quota to meet, and if he didn't meet his quota, he would lose his contract. Gary told me that he used to be out in the bush at 3 o'clock in the morning and would start logging. One morning, when he went and started, some of the equipment wasn't working. Well, he couldn't waste any time, so he put on his snowshoes and grabbed his chainsaw and went up the mountain and started cutting. And he had this most amazing idea. He would cut the trees like this. He would get them ready to fall. And he would cut about 50 trees. And when he had everything ready, he would cut the last tree, and the domino effect would take down all 50 trees. He said it was such an adrenaline rush, it was like the mountain was shaking, and he loved it. But that morning, one of the branches sheared off and came down and hit him in the head, right here. And he had an indentation on his skull that was large enough to put a pencil in. His dream of building a ranch and a logging business in the wilderness was shattered at that moment. If you read this, 3 open skull fractured, ruptured spinal cord in 3 places, 11 ruptured discs, 16 broken and crushed vertebrae, broken pelvis, right scapula broken in 9 pieces, severed brachial plexus, 19 broken bones, including all on the right side, every rib on the right side, and several on the left. Who lives through that? Nobody lives through that kind of an accident. His parents were called and said, if you're not here in 10 minutes, he'll be dead. When his father finally did get there through a raging snowstorm, he said to the doctors, can I talk with my son alone? And he went in, and this is coming from Gary to me. And his father prayed to God and asked God to spare Gary's life. And he said, if you will give my son back his legs and spare his life, we will spend the rest of our lives serving your children. He was confined to a wheelchair and told he would never walk again. He was on 13 prescription drugs, including morphine and antidepressants. He was on morphine for over 3 years. Who wants to live like that? He told me that he was in the bathroom one morning and all of his drugs were on the shelf under the mirror. He picked up the garbage can, set it in the sink, and with one sweep of his arm, put all the drugs in the garbage can. He said, "I don't know who I am. I can't live like this anymore. I'm not going to live like this." They said, "Oh, if you stop your medication, you will die. For sure you'll die." And he said, "I don't care. I'd rather be dead than feel like this." In Gary's own words, "The lowest ebb in my life was when I tried to commit suicide and failed 3 times. Yeah, that could be pretty depressing. I felt so rejected and was sure that God hated me because he wouldn't even let me die. I had nowhere to turn. Had it not been for my father who came to the hospital room shaking his finger at me and told me to grow up, quit feeling sorry for myself, accept the hand that I had been dealt, and figure out a way to get on with life, I might have continued to wallow in self-pity, depression, and eventually succeed in ending my life. My father," and I heard Gary tell this story so many times, and it was always the same. "He made me so angry as he walked down the hall while I was crying out to him, 'If it's the last thing I do, I will get out of this bed and I will walk and ride my horse again.'" Who is this man? Oh my goodness gracious. And of course, everything was gone. He had no insurance. Everything was sold, the logging equipment, his ranch, his livestock, everything. So again, the 3rd attempt was to fast himself to death because nobody could make him eat. After 253 days of only drinking water, lemon juice, and a little cayenne pepper, the most unusual thing happened. He felt movement in his right toe. The doctors told him that it was a phenomena of the human body. They couldn't really explain it except to say that probably his body didn't get enough nutrients to manufacture scar tissue, and the nerve endings began to reroute. And we know that nerve endings can do that. Gary spent 27 months in a wheelchair before he began his path to walk again. This is a rare picture that was taken. I asked him many times, "Why don't you have a picture of you in the wheelchair?" He said, "I didn't want any pictures." And I said, "Well, there are a lot of pictures of you standing." And he said, "Yeah, I would stand up and hold still and they'd take my picture. And then when they quit taking pictures, then they would bring me my crutches or my walker or whatever it was." One night, he was sitting at home in the kitchen reading a magazine. And in that magazine, there was an ad of someone looking for a truck driver. He had his friend take him down to the office and he talked with the owner. And he said, "I want a job driving truck." The owner almost laughed. And if you can imagine the gall, the audacity of somebody in a wheelchair who couldn't walk thinking he could drive a semi-truck. I mean, who does that? Who thinks those kinds of things? Gary wanted the job so badly that the owner said, "If you can go out in the equipment yard and you can move that tractor over to that trailer and hook it up, I'll talk to you." Now just use your imagination. He wheels himself across the gravel parking lot in the wheelchair. He gets to the cab, he reaches up, opens the door, hoists himself up, pulls the wheelchair behind him, puts it behind the cab, turns on the engine, puts it in neutral, and lets it roll. When he gets it where he wants it to go, he simply turns the motor off and shoves it back into gear, and the truck stops. You've all done that, I'm sure, accidentally. He gets out, he opens the cab, gets down, pulls the wheelchair out, wheels himself back where he was supposed to connect the trailer, wheels himself back, gets up in the cab, pulls the wheelchair up behind him, shoves it in behind the cab, turns the engine on, puts it in gear, and lets it go by itself. Moves it to the parking place, turns the engine off, shoves it into gear, opens the cab, gets out, pulls the chair down, gets in his wheelchair, and goes back across the equipment yard to the office. In Gary's words, he told me, the owner came out with tears running down his face and said, "You have a job." This picture that you see, this is the second truck that was retrofitted with hand gears. And Gary drove that truck for a few short years, but he got bored. His mind wasn't challenged. So he sold his truck, moved back to the US, and began exploring ways of healing. He stopped all his medication to clear his mind. As I told you, he disregarded the diagnosis of paralysis and began experimenting with natural remedies. Still in a wheelchair, using crutches and a walker, he enrolled in Spokane Community College, studied nutrition, and went to massage school. Who does that? He soon opened his own health food store, a healing center offering massage and various natural therapies. Who does that? Naturally, as he started to walk and his story spread hither and yon, people were coming. Can you help me? Can you help my mother? Can you help my sister? Can you help my brother? Can you help my next door neighbor? Well, for Gary, it was all about nutrition. His recovery grew in his knowledge of herbs and healing, and he began offering nutritional counseling. But the authorities didn't like that. Gary needed a license to tell people to quit eating sugar and stop drinking soda pop. Start eating raw vegetables, plant a garden. Oh my goodness, what our government does to us sometimes. Many people said, "Gary, go to Mexico. There's more freedom there." So he started looking. He was offered a job doing nutritional counseling for the American Biologics Clinic in Mexico. When he got there, he was so excited about what he thought he was going to be able to do, and what he saw was so disgusting to him, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Here, these doctors, DR period, were treating these poor people with their natural remedies and letting them eat soda pop, sugar, white flour products. Gary was so disgusted, he said, "I can't stand this. I'm not going to work here in this environment." So after 10 days, he quit. So what's he going to do? Didn't have very much money, couldn't speak Spanish, but he was there. So he decided he's going to open his own research center, do his own study, and do his nutritional counseling. That's what he wanted to do. For Gary, everything was about nutrition. We're transcribing some of Gary's cassette tapes, and I found this transcription, and when I read it, I was so amazed. In his own words, "I was in a wheelchair at a grocery store waiting to check out, and at eye level, a caption on the magazine read, 'German doctor detects early stages of disease in coagulated blood.'" Oh my goodness! He grabbed the magazine, opened the page, and read, "Dr. Heaton and Dr. Philip LaGuardia in Germany were detecting early stages of disease through coagulated blood from a pricked finger." Well, Gary was so excited, he found a Dr. Kuhnau in Germany, and wheelchair and all, he went to Germany to learn what these doctors were discovering. When he came home, he was so excited about the blood. He wanted to study hematology, microbiology. He wanted to learn everything he could about the blood. I found this statement. This is so interesting. When I was in a hospital in Canada, I had such a high fever, my skin was peeling off. I had to drink so much water because the doctors wanted blood samples every day in an effort to find out what was causing the high fever. I thought if I drank one more glass of water, I would look like a garden sprinkler. Does that sound like Gary? Always making a joke. I finally refused to drink any more water and accused the nurses of selling my blood because they weren't making enough money in the hospital. The doctors thought my fever was from 3 open skull fractures, but 3 weeks later, after the 3rd spinal tap, they finally determined that I had spinal meningitis. My goodness, what this man went through. But he became so excited about what they were looking for. What were they seeing? What didn't they see? What was in the blood? And Gary came to the absolute knowing that the blood was the window into each individual's health. And Gary had, I think he told me he had 5 medical doctors that he hired in his clinic. He had a chiropractor, he had a naturopath, he had a physiotherapist, he had about 4 or 5 nurses, and he surrounded him with all of these educated people because he wanted them to teach him. So it was easy. The doctor would come, prick the finger, put the blood on the slide, and this is what he would see. I don't know about you, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to diagnose and prescribe for you, but I can tell you this, I hope my blood looks like that. You see a little neutrophil up there? That's a little Pac-Man going around eating all the garbage in the blood, and maybe cells that are dying. But what Gary found is this is what people's blood looked like. This is the beginning of blood cells that aren't moving very well. And look at the other, they call that sticky blood. How can that blood carry nutrients and oxygen throughout your body? You got a problem with that one. Look at that. What are those things? Might be soda pop. Might be white flour. Might be plaque, cholesterol. You can't even identify a blood cell in that slide. Do you want blood that looks like that? No. I want blood that looks like this. So Gary, in his understanding of the human body, started analyzing what he was seeing here in the blood. This is the beginning of what we have today. You need to know this. This story has never been told. If it weren't for what happened to Gary, if it weren't for him being in the hospital with spinal meningitis and then taking so many blood samples and Gary asking so many questions, we might not be sitting here today. The secret is not in where you live, but how you live, how you take care of your temple. As far back as 1983, I discovered that people were not responding to herbs that I was buying, and he was frustrated. So he started gathering his own. He dried them, he ground them, he made tinctures, extracts, salves, poultices, suppositories. Now let's have a good cup of herbal tea. Here's his little apothecary in Mexico. Who does this? Nobody does this sort of thing. Nobody's that interested. Nobody cares that much. Oh my goodness, but these were all very precious to him. And what he started doing is he would make his formulas, give it to the people who were there, and then the doctor would come, prick their finger, and then they'd wait and watch for 4 or 5 hours, prick the finger again, look at the blood, and they could tell what herbs were helping, what made a difference, was there a difference. If he didn't see any change, then he changed the formula. Gary did this for the 8 years that he was in Mexico. Cleansing and feeding the body nutritionally were the programs that Gary embarked upon for his own healing and for anybody else who was asking. Comfortone was his cleanser. Vitagreen was his nutrition. And of course, Vitagreen is now Multigreen because when we went to register it, the name was taken. Now, with the food we eat today, what do you think the colon's going to look like? Which one do you want to have? The life is in the colon, the life of the body, the health. Your health is determined by what's in the colon. I know what I want to have. Comfortone has many ingredients in it, but it has two, bentonite and diatomaceous earth, which are like scrubbers, and they go through the colon, they help clean it out. Now, if you're kind of bloated, feel a little bit sluggish, things don't work the way you want, maybe you need to do a little more cleaning. You need a moving experience. If you don't have a moving experience, you got a problem. Well, take enough Comfortone until you have a moving experience. He discovered that by dehydrating and compressing the fiber, he could get a lot more of the green vegetables in the body. How many of you have heard it's so healthy to eat green vegetables? Are you eating your salad? Are you eating your broccoli? Are you eating your cauliflower? No, cauliflower's white, but it goes along with it all. Are you eating your spinach? Your Brussels sprouts? We call Brussels sprouts shrunken heads at our house. How many of you like Brussels sprouts? Yeah, see? They're not so bad. Well, when he dehydrated and put them into a powder, he could get more of that green stuff into your body, the nutrients that your body needs, that your body loves. Look at these old labels. These are some of his formulas that he created when he was in Mexico. You heard me talk about amino acids when we were on the cruise. I found this little paper that probably is from 1988 or 99 or 89 when he started Young Living. Look at that funny little logo. It's got to be so old. And what does he say? He's talking about aminos. And it reads, all the body's tissue, every cell, muscle, hair, nails, enzyme, and brain chemical is made from amino acids. They are central to the biochemistry of your body. Where do you get amino acids? There are 9 of them that we have to get from our food. From what food? The food that's been sprayed? The food that has been affected by the spray from the next door neighbor? The polluted irrigation water? Gary was so excited about his aminos. He couldn't wait. He was so anxious to get this product on the market. It first came as AminoWise. This is the second AminoTech, many years ago. But those in the office said it costs too much money. It's too expensive. Well, what are you willing to pay the doctor to get you well? That might even kill you. I mean, let's stay healthy. Let's be strong. Let's not go down that path. It's a whole lot cheaper. And I generally don't care what it costs when I buy vegetables. And I buy the good stuff. I mean, we can go organic. Organic isn't the end all, but it's at least one step better than non-organic. At least we can go that far. Minerals. Our body can't live without minerals. Do you feel tired? I think that's just about everybody. Do you have blurry vision? Do you have digestive problems? Do things just not work the way you want? Do you have brain fog? Come on, get the minerals in your body. Give your body what it needs, the nutrients that it needs. If you put enzymes and vitamins, you will make your body so happy. Oh, a little soda pop, a little sweet, a cinnamon bun, oh, maybe some ice cream or chocolate chip cookies. Yum, 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 all the way to the doctor. Come on, let's get real. We all know the soda pop is toxic to the body. How many of you drink soda pop? No, don't raise your hands. You don't have to lie. I don't care. It's your body. But I care that you know what the truth is. Then make an intelligent decision. Do what your body needs. Be strong and healthy and set the example. Don't give your kids soda pop. Oh my goodness gracious. We never had soda pop in our home. We never had white flour. We never had white sugar. Never. And it's still that way in our home. Anne-Marie came with her sister to Gary's little research center. She handed him a package with papers in it that she had translated from French doctors who were doing research on the effects of essential oils for respiratory illness. Oh my goodness, he was excited. He called Anne-Marie and said, I have to learn more. And she said, oh, I thought so. So she invited him to go with her to Geneva, Switzerland the following week to go to this seminar. Who does that? He said it made him crazy by the end of the week because French was going in this ear, her translation was going in that ear. But some of the doctors did speak English, and Dr. Lapraz invited Gary to go with him to Paris to walk the rounds with him in his hospital. Oh, Gary loved every minute of it. And he was like this, tell me this and tell me that. He probably drove Dr. Lapraz nuts with all these questions, but he wanted to know. Well, the doctors were doing their own investigation and they didn't know so very much. But he brought home 13 oils and began to experiment. And oh, I could tell you some really good stories, and one day I will. But he started experimenting. There were no books. There was no one to guide him. No teachers. His only source was God and his logic. And maybe an inner knowing.
Hindi kinuha ko si Mary.
What are essential oils? They're the living liquid within the plant. That's my description.
May drone, no?
Dried herbs don't have that living liquid. That liquid's been taken out. So all you have is the powder, the fiber that they make into powder. So Gary started thinking about it, and he said, you know what? I bet if I put that living liquid from that little bottle into my powder, I could make the powder stronger. I could give my herbs a boost. So that's what he started doing. His first experimentation was with Vitagreen. And the story is very funny. He had a centrifuge with the powder, and he started pouring the oils in, and it went faster and faster, and he thought, oh, this is going to be so great. And when the centrifuge stopped, it was like glue, and he had to use a chisel to get it off the side of his centrifuge. Who does that? People told him he was crazy. He was nuts. There was no value in essential oils. Nobody knew anything about that. There's no scientific proof. Who wants that stuff? It's just like perfume. Not for Gary. He had a knowing. Vitagreen and Comfort Tone were the first two products into which he put essential oils. He was the first in the world to put essential oils into food supplements. That's what you have. It wouldn't have happened. And now you go to the grocery store, every lady gets you and has an essential oil. Well, I guarantee you it's all synthetic. There's not enough of essential oils in the world to ever meet the demand. It's impossible. That's why they need the laboratory. Many people think that essential oils help Gary get out of the wheelchair. Let me set you straight. That is not true. Don't go around telling anybody that. Gary's intense nutritional protocol and sheer will gave him back his legs. He told me when he was in Canada that his father built him parallel bars out of logs. And every day he would go out there for hours, as long as he could do it. He would work his legs to get them moving again. He was walking with crutches and a walker and a cane before he was ever introduced to essential oils. Did they help? Immensely. Of the 13 oils he brought home, he didn't have very much. So he didn't want to use them for himself. Typical Gary. But one night he was in so much pain, he went home, got in the bathtub, and put some of those oils in the tub. And he was surprised himself at the relief he got. You know how, like so many of you do, oh, maybe there is something to these essential oils. Maybe they do work. Maybe I should try a little more. How many of you have been there? Yeah, lots of you. Sometimes. For many of us, that's how we even get started. At least you want to try. If somebody tells you something, investigate it, try it. Find out for yourself. Just don't poo-poo it because there's not enough scientific documentation. Well, the scientific documentation has to come from those who decide to do the investigation and create the science for us. It has to start somewhere. My goodness, if you look at all the universities, research labs around the world that are doing research on essential oils, now you can go to PubMed and find all kinds of articles about essential oils. Oh my goodness gracious, there's so much information out there now. But Gary didn't have any of that, it didn't exist. He was a snake oil salesman, remember? He became his biggest guinea pig. And after we were married, I became his guinea pig. He made these particularly for me. When I was pregnant with Joseph, he took so much calcium from me that Gary said, I've got to make you a really special formula. And he made Mega-Cal for me. I took a lot of clary sage. And to this day, when I smell it, I feel like... So he put peppermint, add a few things, made a nice formula, called it Sclarescence. Still smells like clary sage. But it's a whole lot better. It's a great formula. It's a great oil. Agilise is probably one of his greatest formulas. He was concerned about me. He did his research for probably a year. And then he took it into the office and he talked with Mike Book about it. And he and Mike went back and forth and they worked on it together. But he knew at my age, maybe I needed a little bit of help. Wanted to give me more of a support to the skeletal system of my body. Helps with collagen, helps with muscles, it helps with a lot of things. You simply have to put it in your body and find out for yourself what it's going to do. I don't know, but I know what it does for me. He was so excited, he wanted to know everything there was about essential oils. And he wanted to share. And he realized that helping one person after another was not going to get him very far. And he'd spend the rest of his life talking to one person at a time, and it probably wouldn't make much difference when millions needed it. So in 1988, he sold his research center and moved to Reno, Nevada, and started Young Living. It was called Young Living, Inc. So Young Living Essential Oils was not the beginning for him. He had all this history before we started Essential Oils. At the end of 1989, he moved to Spokane. Wow, look at that spectacular headquarters. Look at that huge group of distributors. Oh my goodness, was he excited. Young Living was growing. We're going to conquer the world. He was a one-man band. Who does this? Oh my goodness. He would take the orders during the day. And he told me, well, maybe one or two a day. Go out into the back, pack it up, get it shipped. Thursday, he'd put the phones on the answering machine. Those were the days of answering machines. Get on an airplane and fly to Dallas or Los Angeles or wherever he had some of those members, distributors, and he'd do meetings, sharing his knowledge, telling them about his excitement of essential oils and what he believed, and taking care of the human